testing the power draw of an Insta360 X4 camera. G'day folks, Don here from 3BR Power Sports. We design and make external power kits and sun shields with external power for action cameras like DJI, GoPro, and Insta360. And today I want to test the Insta360 X4 camera. So a little bit about the camera. The X4 supports the USB power delivery or USB PD charging protocol to allow fast charging of the battery. And along with that, it's worth knowing that Insta360 cameras charge the battery while recording. And I have to say, I'm not at all fond of this charging scheme as it adds heat load to a camera that already runs hot. And in addition, the battery on the X series cameras are part of the door. So with the single lens cameras, you can take the battery out and save that extra heat load. But with the X4 cameras, you can't do that. Okay, let's get into the test method. I'm going to be using a USB PD charger. It has the usual USB-C ports that go with power delivery. It also has a USB Type A port, and this supports the proprietary fast charge protocols like Qualcomm 3.0 and the Huawei Fast Charge. I have not come across an action camera yet that uses any of those proprietary protocols, but we'll test just to be sure. Now, in addition, I have an older BC 1.2 charger, and while the BC 1.2 standard is 5 volts at 1.5 amps, I've never seen a 1.5 amp charger. This one happens to be 2.4 amps, which is pretty common. Now for the testing itself, I'll be collecting data on this little USB tester that's connected to my laptop and records as we go along. As we get data, I'll put the values in this spreadsheet, and we'll be testing with and without the battery, USB PD, and BC 1.2. And I can't possibly test all the different parameters of the camera with all the features it has. So I'm basically going to be testing off, on, 8K 30 with the default configuration, same for 5.760, 4K at 120, and finally 4K 60 single lens. So let's get started. The camera is off, the battery is almost fully discharged. It's going to act a little weird at first because the charging protocol starts up a little gently so it doesn't overtax the battery. And if you notice, it jumped from 5 volts to 9 volts rather quickly. And now the camera's negotiating with the charger for how much power it needs. And you can see we're at 9 volts, and notice the big drop right now. And so it's easing into the charge cycle because, again, the battery is almost fully discharged. And so you watch it, it'll jump back and forth and ultimately should settle around 14 watts somewhere. There we go. I'm going to call it 14.1. Let's save that. Now, let's turn the camera on. Note that the power immediately drops off substantially. We're still in USB PD mode. Notice it's close to 9 volts. And not the 5 volt of the BC 1.2 standard. Notice the current's dropped off to 600, 700 milliamps, something like that. So the power is around 7.5 watts. Now you notice it jumps up and down, and that's because the camera's doing different things. It's pretty difficult to really get an exact number, but what I do is I look for an average line through here. Let's give them 6.8. Save that. Okay, we're in 8K 30 mode, 360 camera, so let's start recording. All right, so we've now jumped up 11 watts. Now again, this is a combination of record power and battery charging power. I've got a lot of testing to do, so these other modes, then switching over to BC 1.2, and then taking the battery out and doing it all again. But rather than bore you with each one of these tests, I'm going to put the video on pause, go ahead and finish the testing, and I'll be back with data and we can look at the numbers. Okay, I'm back. Got our testing done, and as promised, I've gone back and looked at the power off running the USB PD charger, and it's staying around 14.1 watts. So here's all the data. First off, the battery charge rate with the camera off is a little less with the BC 1.2, but not a whole lot. So there's not a lot of benefit with the USB PD charger. Now, once we turn the camera on, again, the power drops way off and they're almost equal. I would say that's as close as I can estimate what the average of the curve is, and it stays that way through the whole cycle. Again, there's not a whole lot difference between the USB PD charger and the BC 1.2. The big change comes when we take the battery out. Notice when it's off, the camera draws almost nothing, but then we turn it on and look at the difference. It's 4 watts, something like that. That's all getting turned into heat, and the same goes for all the other modes. So again, if you're recording in an environment, say it's a sunny day and you're stationary, maybe you're fishing off a kayak or something like that, if you can find a way to run without a battery, your camera's going to run a whole lot cooler. And so there you have it, power test of the Insta360 X4 camera.
3BR Power Sports and X Power are registered trademarks of 3BR Power Sports LLC.